All right, all right, all right. We are live. Bertrand, thank you so much for joining us today. And I love that you have the Viridios logo up. That definitely helps. I tried writing Vagabond back up here, but my handwriting is so terrible, I got embarrassed and just decided to erase it. So I'll put the logo up, but that's all right. So I'll stop talking. I'm not here to learn about me. I know enough about me. I'm here to learn about you, Viridios, your journey, and everything else that we'll get into in a minute. But first, please tell me about you, where you're currently located, and we'll start there.
Thank you very much, Grant, and thanks for opening the floor. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm Bertrand Le Nézet. I'm living in Spain on the eastern coast of Spain, like 350 kilometers south of Barcelona, which is slightly more famous internationally than Valencia. And I love it here. It's a place surrounded with nature, the coast, as everyone expects from Spain, but as well as a mountain. And I'll get to that, but also some quality of life. I'd say probably a slower pace in life compared to my professional life, which helps me, achieve some good balance. And and as you said, I'm working for a company headquartered in Australia, and I'll go into a little more detail later, but it's primarily because I joined a group of companies that was initially founded by an Australian called Eddie Listotti, who is based in Sydney, and that's where we've done the incorporation.
I like it. You're talking about Spain. I got to interview somebody from the Global Entrepreneurship Network, the Startup Genomes annual report they put out. And one of the lines in there that I've been thinking about since I read it was, I think it was Manila. They were talking about the startup community there, how everybody wakes up, goes out swimming in the ocean in the morning, and then goes to work. It's like, that sounds so nice. I wish we had that here. But
that resonates well with me. I've been living in different parts of the world, Germany, Singapore, and I think it's a good chance to live in Spain. It's a different environment. So yeah.
Okay, well, I'll have to come visit you sometime. So let's get into the startup. I want to tell me more about, or let's start off with the pitch first. Give me the elevator pitch for Viridios.
Okay, so it's actually fairly simple. So we've developed a data and intelligence platform around carbon credits, and with the goal to help scaling the carbon markets. So we like to call them ourselves the Bloomberg of the carbon markets. Now let's go into a little more detail on to why such a platform is really necessary. So the voluntary carbon market is based on many carbon projects scattered around the world that deliver climate action. And basically the market is a mechanism to channel some financing from corporation, historically prior in the global north, but everyone needs to do something about their emission and channel this financing into these projects, which again are around the world. The problem is that it's a fairly complicated market for newcomers. There's a lot of the project can be located in different countries, can be in the US, can be Indonesia, can be Brazil. All these countries usually have different cost curves. Then the types of projects can differ tremendously. We can talk about a landfill gas management project. It can be a manure management project. It can be a forest conservation, or it can be a reforestation. And I'm just naming a few. There's hundreds of examples.
I definitely want to get into some examples later of the types of projects, and then I also want to hear how carbon credits might be distributed or regulated differently from America to Europe to Australia, like how they are differently. But before we get into more of the business side of things, tell me more about the story of Viridios. How did it start? Who was I know you're one of the original kind of founders for this project.
So as I alluded earlier, there was Eddie Listotti. He met another main co-founder called Marcelo Labre, based in New York, and they met in the New York Climate Week, I think in 2019. So for the audience that may not be familiar with the concept of the New York Climate Week, he has turned, and even more today than in 2019, as like a gigantic event for the climate and sustainability crowd. And so they met there. And then I have worked in some past lives with Marcelo Labre when I was in Singapore, doing mathematical financings for banks. And so that's, so Eddie found Marcelo knew me, and, so that's how we got together. We headquartered the company in Australia. We knew that we wanted to do something blending finance and climate, but the idea has evolved from the early beginning. At first, we wanted to create a carbon fund to sort of, bring together investors and carbon project developers, so to help strengthen this link. So we had a good idea. We had a preliminary investment thesis, so that we've been testing it with investors. So we started adding some traction, and then we started working on the operational details. How would that be running a carbon fund like this? And so one of the things that we had this long list, and one of the things we stumbled upon is like, how are we gonna create our monthly report for our investors, showing the net asset value, for instance, the so-called NAV in the asset management business. And then so we are like, oh yeah, surely there must be some players that provide pricing for projects on a daily basis, or at least weekly basis. So we started doing our due diligence, market research, and then we wouldn't believe. We were like, there's hardly anything. There's no one. And so we kept searching, talking to people that were in the market for some time. And we multiple times we got this confirmation that there was no such services. And so therefore, and that's where we diverged from the original plan. We're like, okay, if carbon has to scale and becomes really like a new asset class, this service will be required by multiple entities. And so we decided to launch a data and intelligence company around, at first focused on carbon credit pricing, and that was the genesis of Viridios AI. So very solution focused.
Very much.
Very. Yeah.
Where were you looking for your first first few customers? What market were you looking at?
So a bit everywhere, but mostly in the global north. So we had the UK, US, and Australia. These were like the big markets where we started sort of validating the idea.
Nice. All right, and that perfectly leads into. Please tell me more about certain projects you might be working on. Obviously, if things are too confidential, don't reveal that. We're not trying to get you in trouble. But tell me a few different examples of how these carbon credits are being used. And for people who might not be too familiar with the carbon credit system, explain kind of the life cycle of this, of like who does what and how it goes to where.
Okay, so let me try to give a stab at this. So you've got, on one hand, you've got carbon project developers, which can be in, depending on the type of project, but they can be anywhere. So like I said, they can be in the global north and global south. That really depends. So an example would be a famous example of projects are the so-called Red Plus, or forest conservation. So that would be, you have a land area that that is at risk, at known risk or unknown risk for deforestation. So the project developer is basically going to be, his job is going to be to protect a certain area. And there's a lot of reason why you want to protect a forest. But the main two are, number one, and that is not too known, but while burning, typically your people are involved in deforestation are burning forest. That is actually releasing a lot of millions of tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. That's a primary driver. And then obviously the second driver is that by reducing rainforest, you are also limiting your ability to absorb this carbon, because this is the main, together with the ocean forest, are the main carbon sink. So that's one project. And a totally different example could be, and that's typically this project, forest conservation. You'll find them mostly in Amazonia, in the Congo region, in sub-Saharan Africa, and Southeast Asia, Indonesia mostly. And then on the other side, a totally different project would be landfill gas management. So you have like a landfill in the United States, and while with time, landfill produce heavy amount of methane, which, by the way, is much worse. Its power to damage, or its negative power, if you want, for climate is much worse than carbon, and then it releases also some carbon along the way. So this project, for instance, can basically use engineering to transform these gases, methane and carbon, into electricity. But some of these projects sometimes are just not viable on its own, and therefore, carbon credits can be helping or are helpful to make sure that this project come to us. So, long story short, I've described two type of project. These projects follow methodologies which are generally defined by standards, carbon standards. The famous ones would be Vera, would be gold standard, ACR CAR. I'm sorry for the acronym. And they get and the projects get verified and monitored to make sure that the project basically does what it's saying in its design document, in its so-called PDD, what it's supposed to be doing. And then once the validation has happened, then the project can issue carbon credits, which becomes therefore a tradable asset, if you want, a financial asset. And they can sell these assets. So these project developers can sell these assets to corporation who wants to basically pay for their impact on climate change, and they want to pay a contribution for their emissions. I think historically we were talking a lot about net zero, meaning compensation for your own emissions. I think the market is slowly moving a bit away from that concept, but people talk more about contribution now. So we're not saying that you're erasing your emission, but we're saying at least you are channeling some funding into projects which are actually delivering climate action.
That's a good differentiation. I actually haven't heard that new phrase yet. So, you're on the front lines of this, so you probably heard all this before me, but that's good to hear. I'm sure I'll be hearing it more often. So how do things differentiate a little bit between the US, between the UK and Australia? Is it more carbon credits are used for tax deduction in the US versus companies that are trying to be more eco-friendly in the EU? Or how does that break down?
Okay. So it's a deep topic. I think I'll start by saying that the main difference between US and Europe is that Europe already has a a so-called emission trading system, so which is a compliance market that works with carbon quota. So every corporation, or not every, but a certain list of sectors which are the most carbon emitting ones, have carbon quota, and they have to meet this quota. If they exceed the quota, then they need to either pay a fine or buy allowances from companies which have emitted less than their carbon quota. So, and we already have a scheme that applies to all the countries in Europe. Whereas you have in the US, you have similar schemes. So you have one that is very important in California. You also have something around the power operator in the northeast called RDGI, and then you have some stuff in Quebec, but it's definitely not a countrywide scheme. So the big difference, I'll start by saying that, is that in Europe, if you take a steel and aluminum companies, wherever they are located, they will be under this carbon pricing mechanism. Whereas in the US, it really varies from state to state. And I don't think this is going to change so quickly because I guess the wealth, to speak in crude terms, varies a lot from one state to another. So if you impose the same carbon tax in Wyoming compared to California, I mean, all the businesses are gonna die. So, therefore,
we're kind of already seeing that a little bit in California, where a lot of them are moving to Texas and Florida and elsewhere, and even Nevada, just to get away from the ever-increasing taxes. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that changes, which California has done a lot of good things like incentives for solar power. But then they've also tried to implement, I think it's like every car in California has to be electric by 2030, which is just...
That's aggressive.
Yeah, that's
in Europe. It's 2035, as you may know. So, and people are already complaining about it. So, but
yeah, I mean, it's nice that the price of Tesla is dropping, but also when you refactor the cost of electricity versus gas, it's is it really cheaper in the long run? And there's a lot of problems.
It's a complicated topic. However, I'm a firm believer that it's also by sending market signals that the industry practices start to change. And if you don't put a deadline, some of the corporations, are just. I mean, I'm not talking about all of them. I mean, some are generally concerned and are truly delivering climate action, but there are also many others which, are not doing anything, and and nobody talks about it, and I don't think it's right. So.
I mean, I'm from Houston, Texas. We're known for oil and gas. So yeah, I know what you're saying, but Texas has also done a really good job of, I think, we're the #1 wind energy producing state in the US. Yeah. So making moves. We'll see what the next few years, and Austin's definitely been a huge push towards more green energy in the state. But I'll stop bragging on Texas for a little bit. Tell me more. I'm kind of moving away from Viridios. Tell me more about your startup community, kind of Europe and mainly Spain, where you're at right now. How has it been able to help you? Or I guess in your case, you could really, touch on Australia as well, because your company's incorporated there. Tell me about those startup communities and how they've kind of helped your business, and whether it's been government.
Yeah, I mean, so due to the fact of where I'm currently living and I have been living, I think, unfortunately, most of my connection with other entrepreneurs are remote. I know a lot of them in Singapore, in London, in Paris as well. Paris start to have a very, with something, I don't know if you've heard, but they've got sort of association, a program called La French Tech, which is very, very powerful to bring together all the French tech companies. And I'm also, I've started attending a few events in Valencia here where I live, where there's a growing sort of tech entrepreneur scene. Still emerging, but yeah. And then I think beyond that, I think about a year ago, I joined a network called the Open Door Climate, which is sort of a network of climate professionals offering guidance to those who wants to move into climate careers. And through that, I met quite a few students. I've met also professionals, looking to make a career change, telling me, I've heard countless stories of, my job doesn't make sense anymore. I want to change that. And then you'd be surprised. I've actually met also a number of serial entrepreneurs looking at, starting their next gig in climate tech, in climate finance. And, some of this relationship over the last year have been tremendously helpful because I can give them something around climate tech, and they they have sometimes created 3-4 startups. So much more experience in entrepreneurship than I currently have. And so it's been super helpful to validate ideas, bounce some ideas, gain different perspectives. Sometimes especially people who have been doing multiple ventures like this can be very blunt, and I appreciate that. Like they'll be telling you, no, okay, don't go there. That's a waste of time. So many takeaways, but I think maybe if I have to summarize, number one, I'd say always manage your financial for your startup very carefully. That's like your blood. So you should always have this in the mirror. Another thing is, like, don't wait until you think you have the perfect product to start marketing your brand, engaging with the market, talking to people. Do both things at the same time. Build, connect, validate, change, and related to this. Yeah.
What's that Reid Hoffman quote? It's if you're not embarrassed by your MVP, you release too late.
Exactly. Totally. But I think and that's something that I've heard multiple times. But when you're a new entrepreneur, even so, I've read countless books on entrepreneurship, but some of these hard lessons you have to learn it the hard way. Yep. And so I love these quotes that you mentioned. And then and then related to this, it's always the same question: how do you achieve product market fit? How do you know you're there? At least in my experience, it's more it's not there's no secret recipe. So it's a lot of trial and error, a lot of hard work, a lot of pain, and sometimes a little bit of luck. So yeah.
No, I'm getting ready the whole lesson plan for this semester's accelerator program with my students, and I'm already thinking through the ways of very much like, one, you got to avoid analysis paralysis. You don't want to just be like looking at the research. You can research until you're blue in the face, but until you get out there and start talking to people and showing your product and asking, would you buy this, or asking them to buy, an early sample, you'll never know. And that's the best validation you could ask for, instead of just researching. Just get out there. So I'm still thinking through the ways of like, how do I properly demonstrate this to my students this semester of, your MVP looks terrible. Absolutely. Go out there and talk to people about it. So I'm excited for this semester to really get going. I think yesterday was the first day of classes. So right now it's just recruiting for the program. Tell me one more time, what was that French program you were talking about?
The French Tech.
French Tech. Okay, I'll have to look. I think somebody.
You'll find it. They have a cool. They have a cock as a logo. They have a rooster as a logo, and it's kind of cool.
I'll have to look into there and see if we can get some Frenchmen on here. But besides that, perfect. Tell people, if people watch this and are interested in partnering up with you and reaching out, where can they find you at?
I guess our corporate website, Viridios AI. is probably the best place to go. They can actually subscribe to our free weekly carbon report over there. And then we also do quite a fair bit of publication when it comes to social network on LinkedIn, which is de facto more than Twitter. I think more it's really the place where the climate and sustainability community sort of get together. And yeah, so we publish quite a few insights out there.
Nice. Well, Bertrand, thank you so much for the time. This has been a pleasure to get to meet you, and I wish you and Viridios all the best. I can't see any downside to you guys becoming extremely successful. So keep it up, man, and keep our climate cool. All right.
Thank you very much, Grant. You have a nice day ahead.